Personal spiritual alchemy, eh? Transforming one's base nature into a more refined version of itself, which is entirely motivated by love rather than fear. I wanted to talk tonight about some of the nuances involved in that process, in the Cosmosis transformational process. We talk a lot as far as the attitude for success as far as personal spiritual alchemy is concerned. We talk a lot about the need for patience and losing judgment. And that's really key to any mechanism of self-transcendence, of any spiritual path, is this need to move beyond judging everything. That's not so easy to put into practice. And when we first start to work with non-judgment, we start to work with acceptance and forgiveness and a whole lot of things which really provide you with a mechanism of stepping stones towards ceasing to judge everything. As part of the Cosmosis process, we have this step of releasing judgment. But before you can release judgment, you have to be able to stop judging. And before you can stop judging, you have to be aware that you're judging. And it's just second nature for so many people, because we grow up and we learnt that social interactions are all about gossiping and sitting in self-righteousness, self-righteous condemnation of other people and looking down your nose at people and weighing everyone up about in terms of superiority and inferiority and all this stuff. It's all about judgment. So it really takes a while to learn how to approach life in a whole new way, which is not about judging everything. So this first very, very, very important step is to get to the point where you really understand what judgment is, and your mentor works with that to point out to you when you are judging. And you might go, oh, really? That's not judgment? Well, yes it is. And it is for this reason. Oh, really? Wow. Oh, so that's judgment. Okay. Oh, well, I can work then on catching myself when I'm doing that. So the early stages, when you're working with the Cosmosis process, you find yourself judging something, projecting judgment at something, situation, person, whatever, yourself. So you find yourself projecting judgment, and then you go, oh, that's right, I'm judging. I'll stop that. So you have to then catch yourself and stop yourself judging. And then you run the transmutational process over yourself as you're catching that judgment, as you're containing that judgment. And for a long period of time, many people, you still go, oh, I'm judging again. Okay, but I'm aware of it. Okay, I realise I'm doing it, so I can contain it. I can stop doing that. I can contain that, and then I can transmute that judgment. And every time you do that, it makes it a little bit easier to be aware of the judging, and you'll find that you'll be triggered into projecting judgment less. You'll be much more likely, as you engage in the activity of catching yourself when you're judging, you find yourself becoming more aware more quickly. So you have this experience of coming to an understanding of yourself, and your consciousness will expand as you do so. As you become much less quick to jump to judgment, you'll find that correspondingly your consciousness will be expanding and your awareness will be improving. The next step is, in the instant that you find yourself starting to project judgment about something, you instantly become aware. It's not that you've been triggered into judgment and then you go, oh bugger, I'm judging. Oh, I'll contain that, I'll stop that, and I'll work on transmuting that. You've got to the point now, as soon as you start to judge and project judgment, you're aware of it. That's when you can start to be releasing the judgment, because it's not like you've turned the hose on and all this water's come out and then you go, oh bugger, all this water's coming out of the hose, I better contain that. As soon as the judgment starts, you're aware of it. So as soon, before you've actually even projected it, you can start working on releasing it, transmuting it, releasing it through transmutation. So that's the next step. And with that comes a certain expanding of your consciousness and an increasing of your awareness. And this is vitally important to engage in this process early on in the path, because what it does is right from the beginning it gets you into the habit of engaging in life in an activity which is going to be all about refining and spiritualizing your ego and your psyche. So once again, the first stage is, in the early stages you find yourself, oh, I'm judging, but you've already started to judge, and then you realise that you've done that, and then you contain that and you start to transmute it with the Cosmosis process. But then you get to the point, as soon as you start to judge, you're aware of it, and then you can just release it, because you don't have to go and try to contain that which you've already projected. So you're able to then more smoothly and more elegantly, let's say, use the Cosmosis transformational process, because you're able to release the judgment as soon as it comes up. Now the next step in mastery, in self-mastery of the psyche, is when you start to feel, before it's even happened, before you've started to judge, before it's not even that you are, as you're starting to judge, you catch yourself and you start releasing. You start to feel the intention to judge, and you catch yourself at the intending to judge stage, and then you can just cease it, because you haven't even started to do it when you catch yourself intending to judge something. So you can actually cease it. But then you've still got to transmute the intention, because the intention was still there. And if you hadn't have caught yourself before you started to do it, you would have done it. So you can't just leave the intention there, because if you just leave the intention there, those little fragments of intention will build up and slap you up the back of the head at some point, and you'll end up with a big explosive judgment. So you've still got to transmute the intention to judge. Once you've done that for a while, and you will find yourself that some things that you tend to be all self-righteous about, some things you'll be able to stop the judgment, some things you'll be able to just release the judgment as it's happening, other things at the same time you'll be able to cease the judgment. So the various levels of that activity that you're engaging in. And as you do that, you're going to learn so much about yourself, your likes, your dislikes, what you sit in self-righteous condemnation of, where you're not walking the talk of truly leading a spiritual life or engaging in love, grounding, expressing love in each and every moment. Now, when you actually get to the point of being able to release the judgment, that second stage, then you're really starting to be able to engage with discernment, because discernment is a type of high-level, spiritualized, refined judgment, let's say. Discernment is about really acknowledging what's going on. And the mechanism that you use to do that is compassion, because compassion is being able to, in a space of complete non-judgment, being able to understand why things are happening the way that they are happening. This is one of the reasons that we work with integrating and learning to take life in and turn it into compassion, not just unconditional love. Take all of life in and use your system to transmute it into compassion. Because with compassion comes this understanding of why things are happening the way that they are. And if you understand why something's happening the way that they are, why someone is that, why you are such a big idiot, your master teacher type person, if you start to understand why things are happening the way that they are, it makes it very hard to judge then. So these things all run in parallel. And discernment is being able to acknowledge and comprehend why things are occurring the way that they are occurring in the moment. Not in hindsight, in the moment. You just get it. So you're able to then be there and engage in that situation or with that person or whatever in a way which is all about love and all about wisdom and all about compassion. And that's what it is to really walk the talk of leading a spiritual life. So all of these things kind of go together. So the ideal situation is not that you are just able to intend to judge something and catch yourself before you actually project judgment or formulate a judgment, and you cease that and then transmute the intention to do so. The ideal is to have a complete absence of judgment. And it's funny, you know, when you actually get to the point where you've reached that degree of self-mastery that you don't just form judgments about everything and have an opinion about everything which is none of your business. You just have a complete absence of judgment. People interpret that like you don't care. Well, you don't care. It's not that you don't care if you don't have a judgment about something. It's that you don't mind. Well, I don't mind. It's none of my business. I don't have an opinion. People might not be able to understand what that's all about, but really that's a very high-level spiritual state, to have a complete absence of judgment. And over the next little while, what I'm going to do is very intensely hold you in a space of not non-judgment, but a complete absence of judgment. One of the things it does, if someone holds you in this very intense space of non-judgment, is it makes you very aware of where your own judgments are and where your own self-righteousness is. So I'd encourage you, as you're feeling that, to work on transmuting that as we're going along. So acknowledgement, taking that mechanism of judgment and turning it into being discerning, so that you're not naive, you're not being gullible, you're able to be discerning. Part of that is reining in the judgment through that multi-step process. And then through the mechanism of compassion, and your mentor works with you a lot to help you to understand how this actually works. Through the mechanism of compassion then, you're able to acknowledge why things are occurring the way that they're doing, why that they are, but also have this very, very clear sense of the ideal, the best that this situation could be. Now that comes from this process of an absence of judgment and acknowledging through the mechanism of compassion and understanding why things are happening the way that they are. And then as you are interested in what's going on around you, now you're sort of in what's called isolated unity. When you're in that space and you're not interested in what's happening around you, that's what we call isolated unity. And you feel intensely a part of everything, but you feel very set apart from everything. Then, from that concentrated point, if you then start taking an interest in what's happening around you, that's when you start to find that you're able to bring a loving presence, bring wisdom to a situation, which only adds to the possibility of really loving outcomes with everything that you're doing, everything that you're engaging in. Now, how do you express that interest? How do you actually then, from that point of isolated unity, how do you then involve yourself in what's going on around you? Well, you've acknowledged what's happening. You acknowledge it, and that's through pure awareness. But then, as you take an interest in it, what are you really doing? You're actually applying your conscious awareness to the situation in a way that brings you into comprehension. So acknowledgement and comprehension aren't the same thing. You can acknowledge something. You can acknowledge something and be aware of it, but that's different to then putting conscious awareness onto it and being interested in it and bringing comprehension to it. So, being able to, through non-judgment, through this window, if you will, this doorway of acknowledgement, the new way that you learn to interact with the world, but be in the world yet not of it, like the great teachers speak of, is through this process of comprehension with non-judgment. And your mentor will work with you to involve yourself in that way. One of the great benefits of, and that's just an outline, don't expect you to fully comprehend all of that and go, oh, that's how I'm going to be from now on. I'll just walk out the door and that's how I'm going to be. I'm just explaining the mechanism of transcendence that we use with the Cosmosis transformational process. And it's something which you learn how to do and how to live your life in this way over a period of time. And it takes as long as it takes. It's like one of those enjoyable trips that you take, you know. You can leave to go on your holiday and you know it's a 4-hour drive and every 2 minutes you look at your watch and, oh, are we there yet? And you can be really annoyed and you can arrive there really exhausted, or you can just get in the car and you can go, we're off on our journey and we're leaving now and it'll take as long as it takes and we'll get there when we get there and we'll enjoy the ride. I'd suggest that you do it that way because who knows how long it's going to take. And it is this very enjoyable journey. So I want to work with helping you with that non-judgment process tonight. I want to hold you in a space of unconditional love and compassion and gratitude, which will help you to get better at being aware of when you're judging so that you can really engage in that process of reining in that judgment. So, acknowledgement, increasing your ability to work with awareness in a way that you acknowledge things, because that's 70% of transcending something, is to be able to acknowledge it. Remember, acknowledgement is the antidote to denial and avoidance. And there's no room for denial and avoidance on the spiritual path. If you're really committed to enlightenment and illumination, there's no room for hiding the truth from yourself. And that's what denial and avoidance is. It's like, here's the truth, but I'm going to twist that round in my head. I'm going to have a certain emotional attitude towards this, which creates a glamour and an illusion so that the truth doesn't seem like the truth, to make it easier for me to live with. There's no room for glamour and illusion, and there's no room for denial and avoidance. Avoidance of the truth or denial of the truth. There's no room for that on the spiritual path. The antidote for that is acknowledgement. That's why it's so important to really practice it, just like you're learning a musical instrument. You have to practice non-judgment, acknowledgement, and working with the mechanism of compassion in order to transcend the need that you have to deny, to avoid, and to judge. All of those things are tied up together. The other thing is, a lot of people, New Agey sort of people say, yeah, you can create all sorts of things and bring things into your life with expectation. Now, that's very true. Expectation is a really powerful creative force. If you put an enormous amount of energy into expectation, you can railroad your way into manifesting something. Certainly, it probably has nothing to do with the highest good of all concerned, but you can certainly use expectation as a very, very potent creative force. But I would not advise you to approach life in that way. It will cause a lot of suffering. Why? If you have a very powerful expectation about something, and you expect something to happen in a certain way, if you co-create with the universe, it doesn't matter what the idea you have of an outcome. I'll guarantee the universe can imagine it much, much more wonderful than anything you can possibly imagine. But if you stubbornly stick to an expectation, and you expect it to be this way, and I want it to be this way, and I'm not going to be happy, so I have an expectation that I'm going to win $100, and I'm not going to be happy unless I win $100. But you just won $1 million. Yeah, I know, but my expectation was to win $100, so I'm just not happy. I am not happy, I am not happy, I am not happy. Because I wanted to win $100. I don't care that I won $1 million, I wanted to win $100, and I'm not happy. That's not a good look in the context of the spiritual process. And that's kind of a ridiculous example, but that's what happens. If you have that expectation, and this is the only thing I'm going to be happy with, I expect this to happen, and it's just something much more wonderful happens. But it's not what you expected to happen, so you're not happy. So that's what I mean. Expectation can create an enormous amount of suffering. That's just your own expectation. What about when other people project a lot of expectation onto you? You had that situation? In a relationship, in a work situation, in a romantic relationship, and you have all this expectation placed on it. It's never verbalized. There's all this expectation, and you can never work out what you're doing wrong. You try to do your very best to meet these expectations, but it's just, you're never going to win there. So you're just going to create a lot of suffering there as well. So what's the antidote to expectation? Well, it's patience. Because actually, in spiritual terms, the literal definition of patience is being without expectation. So when you really master patience, and you start to work with this acknowledgement process and comprehension process where you bring the light of spiritual knowledge to something through discernment and compassion, you start to, the whole world opens up to you in a whole new way, and the whole universe starts to open up to you in a whole new way. And that's how you really enter into this space of being able to co-create with spirit and co-create with the universal consciousness. So, and really, I'm not saying, you know, now I want you to do all that now and I'll wait. It's not like that. It's something that you learn how to do over a period of time. But it's good to get an understanding of how all that works. So we have the importance of patience, being without expectation, the importance of learning how to rein in judgment, to work with compassion through discernment. We take acknowledgement into comprehension, into a spiritual comprehension. And the other thing which is vitally important to this whole process of personal spiritual alchemy, to be able to, in your own right, produce the necessary alchemical tension within yourself which produces a spiritual transformation within yourself, a self-initiated spiritual initiation within yourself, is to work with the process of refinement which is associated with tolerance. Now, I often wonder what would have happened if Christianity over the last 2,000 years had have promoted tolerance instead of what it has chosen to promote. I wonder where we would actually be in the world. Tolerance is a really important thing to work with as part of this process of reining in your judgment. It's like, acknowledge you're a dickhead, but I don't have an opinion about it, and I just choose to tolerate you. That's better than projecting all this self-righteousness and judgment. I'm not saying that's an ideal by any means, but that can actually be one of the stepping stones, you know. There are infuriating people in the world. They enjoy being infuriating. You might have really infuriating personality traits of your own. Sometimes you're going to meet people that are going to rub you the wrong way, and sometimes you're going to rub people the wrong way. If more people were able to be tolerant and be able to live and let live and just accept things as they are through using the will with tolerance, we would certainly have a lot fewer problems in the world. So tolerance is an important part of the early stages of learning to rein in judgment. When you judge stuff, you become very susceptible to other people projecting their judgments and expectations onto you. And if you're sensitive, that really affects you. In the early stages of being involved in this personal transformational process, tolerance is one of the real keys to that. Because if you choose to be tolerant, that's an antidote to all that projection that's coming at you from other people. You can't just set up like psychic self-defense boundaries for anything that you are doing yourself. If you are engaging in self-righteous attack thoughts at other people, then no amount of psychic self-protection is going to be able to protect you from other people projecting those self-righteous attack energies at you. It just doesn't work like that. This is why upstairs we'll say often that we can protect you against everything except your own stupidity. You can't go around wearing all this psychic armour against stuff that you're doing to other people. And you see a lot of people in the New Age movement, particularly people that are psychics and untrained psychics, wandering around, and they're saying, oh yes, I'm very spiritual and I'm very this and very that, and they're all very paranoid, and they're really competitive with other people that that work in the same field as them, and very judgmental, and they make all these derogatory comments about all these other psychics and all this sort of stuff, and they project all this attack energy. That's a sign of how unclear a lot of people are. So there's a lot of that around, and the way that you initially start to be able to some degree, fortify yourself from coming under that onslaught, if you're sensitive, of all of this projection and judgment coming at you, and you feel it, it hits you here in the solar plexus normally, is through tolerance. You just have to choose to exercise your will in such a way that you just choose to be tolerant. Now, as you're going through this process of reining in your judgment, I'm judging something, I'm going to stop that, I'm going to contain it, I'm going to transmute that, or I'm starting to judge, I'm going to release that judgment as I'm generating it. Okay, I'm back to center. Or, I'm about to judge, I'm going to start, so I'll cease that, and then I'll transmute the intention, ultimately moving into the ideal space, which is a complete absence of judgment. The ideal of that, it is the ideal, because in an absence of projecting any judgment at all, and in the absence of formulating constantly opinions about everything that's going on in the world and around you, you free up an enormous amount of consciousness and an enormous amount of awareness with which you can then begin the exploration of the universal realm, and ultimately, when you move beyond that, to actually start exploring your own cosmic origins. And that's an important part of the high-end development in the Cosmosis process. But we're talking about the ABC of it. At the moment, we're talking about the beginning steps of that. So all of these things are vitally important to master. What you find is, as you just choose to be tolerant of those things that bug the shit out of you, you choose to exercise your will in such a way that you just become tolerant of that. And as you become tolerant of that, you become much more aware of your own judgment, and it increases the efficacy, the efficiency of you being able to rein that judgment in. The more you rein the judgment in, the more you increase your capacity for wisdom in the moment. I don't mean that kind of wisdom which is like, I sense in this moment that if I just said the right thing, something magical would happen. And then 3 minutes later you go, now I know what I should have said. I don't mean that kind of wisdom. I mean the wisdom that actually happens in the moment, where you're just so in the moment and things just start to flow. And you start to feel this expansion in the moment. And you have those wonderful experiences when a moment seems to last for hours. And within that, you have this opportunity to commune in unconditional love and in wisdom and in compassion and so forth, and really touch other people and move other people, and to become known for this kind of presence. So that's some of the nuances of the early stages of the Cosmosis process. And what I want to do now is hold you in some different frequencies of compassion and gratitude. Yep, you better get ready. I'm ready now. Do your best. See if you can. You hit me with that compassion. I can bounce anything off me. Some different frequencies of compassion and unconditional love and gratitude. But I want to take you on a little bit of a journey where you actually put will behind the intention to be open to unconditional love and compassion and gratitude in a way which is for the highest good and the wisest for everything that is involved in any particular situation. I'll take you through what it feels like to run through some of these different alignments and some different attunements, and to feel as you feel without judgment, to release that and just work on being open to unconditional love and above. Remember, if it's unconditional love and above, it ain't going to hurt you. It's only going to help you. So to just be, I'm open to frequencies of unconditional love and above, receiving that, bathing in that energy, feeling that energy. And to be mindful of the importance of this mechanism of transcending judgment. And the reason you're doing that is because it's going to help you to actualize more wisdom in your life, more insight in your life, more unconditional love in your life, more patience in your life. And when you feel resistance within yourself, when you feel that resistance within, run the Cosmosis process over that. I release this energy, it's not of me, and I return it to its original source, and I replace it with tolerance, gratitude, acknowledgement, and comprehension of spiritual truth. Now feel the power of love. Allow love to restore that balance. Just allow yourself to be moved so that you can feel different ways that you can align the chakras, different ways that you can integrate the soul mechanism with the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, which facilitates and enhances this process of reigning in judgment. Ultimately learning to live in an absence of judgment, and then through this experience of discernment to be able to massively enhance your ability for conscious awareness. Allow your consciousness to float out beyond the body, but all of that conscious awareness floating out beyond the body is concentrated at a point which is the living center of your life, in the heart center. Not the physical heart, the organ pump thing, the heart center in the center of the chest. Feel yourself having the ability to take life in and turn it into love rather than fear. Being enhanced, being increased. I take life in and I turn it into love. I turn it into wisdom, and that's what I radiate, and that's what I reflect back out into the world in each and every moment. And I choose to align my will to be tolerant, to be kind, and to be patient. As far as my humanness is concerned, I choose patience, tolerance, and kindness towards myself and towards everyone that I encounter. I allow love to work its magic. I feel the resistance to that love within me. I release that resistance. I return it to its original source. And I replace it with tolerance, patience, and kindness. I am patience, I am tolerance, I am kindness. I am. And I allow love to restore the balance. Feel the violet flame transmuting any resistance, releasing that energy, that resistance, replacing it with patience, kindness and tolerance. Feel yourself grounding that, bringing that here as a conscious presence. And affirm to yourself this new alignment, patience, kindness and tolerance, an absence of expectation, an absence of judgment. Affirm that as you return to a state of wakefulness and remind yourself of your commitment to actualizing this as part of your spiritual ideal. Feel that power of love and allow love to restore the balance.